Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast, it's Critical Blast.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline. Hello, everyone out there on the interwebs. I started to say one particular place, but I realized that that we were on multiple places. So how y'all doing? This is Silver Sunday, or I should say, welcome to Silver Sunday. This Sunday, April the 11th. Well, I started to say March. It's just April now. So that shows you how long it's been since I've been here. I want to make sure I give a big shout out to Daytona Beach Comic Con for being a sponsor of the Silverline streams, both the Silver Sunday and the Wednesday Wham. I am Roland Mann. I am the chief cook and bottle washer here at Silverline. Curtis, welcome back.
Sure. Good to be back. Yeah, I took a month off. As most of you may know, I am a martial arts instructor. I took a month off. I had to close down my physical location.
Roberta, you're up next.
Hello. Hi, I'm Roberta Conroy. I'm a former Malibu Comics colorist, and I am currently on Silverline coloring two titles that are current, and one that's, what are we calling it? Redux?
Remix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'll be coloring a little bit later, some more Pendulum.
Aaron.
Well, yeah, I'm the artist on Fire Rush.
John, the Viking Prince Voltan.
I am John Martin. I am the inker on Friar Rush.
Behind the scenes, we have you can't see his name on the screen, but we have unpaid producer, which is my son Brett, who is turning all the knobs and punching all the buttons tonight to make sure that you get to see and hear us. So thank you, Brett. Stephen Brown says hi. Dempsey Blackman says hello, everyone. What's up, Dempsey? And Ryan, Ryan, I hope I say your last name correctly. It looks like Permisson. Ryan gave us several topics for possible discussion. Not what we're going to discuss tonight, but several topics that we might add to our list in the future. Benny Powell, give us a big thumbs up. What's up, Benny? So anyway, we said we were going to talk about professionalism again, because I think we had a pretty fun discussion when we were talking about professionalism in comics and what to do and what not to do. And since Curtis wasn't here, I'm going to put Curtis on the spot first. Okay. Curtis, so before we went on, you suggested maybe there's some things that you might want to talk about, what not to do, or things not to do. I don't know if that's being unprofessional or.
Yeah, sure. Well,
Okay.
I mean, and
Dive in.
is it okay if I dive into the first thing is it's actually from my video game experience, but it's
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I think it's all about working as a creator, working with others, right? And
Sure.
how do you be professional? And in video games, you doing art in the video game can translate into doing creative work in comics. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I would say if you're an artist, make sure you submit your portfolio under your name and don't call yourself the Skinwalker, because we did have that happen once in a video game job where we were evaluating a guy that was going to join our team, and it didn't even have a first or last name. It just said Skinwalker, and then it had a address and an email to send it, to respond to, and that's just weird. So first tip, use your real name, not your nom de guerre, as it were.
Well, okay. So let me ask you a question, because and hopefully some of our Silverliners are listening, because there's one in particular whom I love greatly, and when he hears this, I would give him a big bro hug to let him know I still love him. But I think when you use an email address that says something like "one cool hip writer dude," right? That's not very professional, right? I don't want to get an email from one slick writer or a future Eisner winner, right? I don't want to get. I want to get an email from your name and whatever platform you're on, whether that be AOL. I didn't know they were still around. Gmail or Yahoo or whatever, right? Use your name. Be professional.
Yeah. I think what it boils down to is, and I'm not saying it because there's tons of great artists with just like a pen name, for lack of a better word, but sure. But there's always this saying that if you don't create an image or cultivate an image that you're presenting, that creates an image accidentally or unto its own, and not necessarily a good one. Right. So I would say always be aware of that. I say that's a huge thing. Be honest about your work. We had an instance where somebody wanted to join our art team, and their artwork was actually stolen from an artist in far in Europe that they didn't think everybody knew. And so they sent it in, and one of the artists on our team noticed it. So they were called into a meeting and asked to talk about their artwork for the interview. And halfway through the interview, they just pulled out this limited edition European art book and said, "So what about this?" and put it on the table.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And the artist, she just kind of goes, I probably should be going now, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that seems so weird about that.
Well,
the thing that seems so weird about that is if she couldn't actually reproduce that art, I mean,
right?
She's going to join the team, and then they were going to be like, "Well, you're not reproducing what you pitched us."
Right.
Exactly.
So it seemed like it was just a way to fail from the beginning.
Exactly.
Unless you can actually reproduce that complete style of art.
And if that is the case, then that should be, your
then you should, yeah.
Yeah.
So that seems like a really weird way. It's not like, other jobs where you can just, kind of learn as you go. Like, oh, I kind of fit, but I'll just kind of catch up and just go. It's like you can't really catch up on art. That takes years and years of practice.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's not something you can go into the office and fake.
Right. No. That's kind of
do it all the time. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you might be able to do that on Photoshop. You might be able to say, "Yeah, I've used Photoshop for years," and then run home and try to learn a little bit more about. But you might be able to do, depending on what you're doing.
No, you can't do it fast.
No, not fast. Yeah,
and that's kind of half the problem.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about being professional too is just a matter of when you go for an interview or anything like that, it's about what can you offer, right? And if you're part of a team or anything like that, and comic books are highly collaborative, are extremely collaborative, and I think Roland can probably attest, and everybody here can probably attest. I mean, we've seen people that are phenomenal artists or creators in their own right, but when they can't work as a team, they don't last long in the industry. Nobody wants to work with a jerk, so I definitely say those are kind of the key points. And I'd say as an artist, the hardest thing is, and I think any creator, but is taking criticism. I mean, it's a constant battle, no matter how good you are, how good you think you are. Artists will always ask somebody, well, what do you think? And that means different things to different people. Some people, what do you think means, can you just compliment me on how great I am?
I asked Curtis this and he just laughed. I'm not really sure why he was laughing.
But yeah, it's like, if you ask somebody for their opinion, you got to be prepared to hear what they have to say and not get overly defensive. You don't necessarily have to agree with them, but if you're looking for a critique or somebody to analyze your work, you have to be willing to accept what they have to say.
Yeah.
And also, if you're the person giving the critique, I know it's tempting, but try not to crack your knuckles beforehand.
Yeah, rub your hand. Rub your hand.
Like, all right,
Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
you let me off the chain.
Yeah.
I mean, Larry Hama did ask me, "Are you sure you want me to give you a critique?"
Oh yeah.
Before he did.
Why are you
How was
handing
it?
me
How was
ta-
it though? Was he? Was
Why
he?
are you handing
Was
me
he fair,
tissue?
though?
What's up with that? What?
Was he fair? Was he? John, what do you think?
I feel like he could have been a little harder on me.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the sign of somebody, I guess, who really is trying to get better. I felt like he could have been a little harder on me, especially after the story he told me about how Greg Capullo was mad at him for years for the critique he gave him.
Oh yeah. I mean, I heard the interview with Greg Capullo where I guess it got so bad that Greg Capullo was getting his face and Larry Hama basically told him, "Get the F out of my office."
Really?
Yeah,
Wow, I never heard that.
Yeah, there's a fascinating
amazing.
interview where I guess Greg Capullo kept coming back and getting reviews from Larry Hama, and Larry Hama was just really blunt and was like,
Oh, he was tearing him apart.
yeah. And I guess, but Greg Capullo kept coming back, and at one point it finally hit a head, and I guess this was in the Marvel offices, at least the interview I heard with Greg Capullo. And he got so angry at Larry Hama, started getting his face and mouthing off, and so that's when Larry Hama kicked him out of the office,
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and Larry Hama told me the story before he gave me the critique.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay, so how was it? Did that kind of jibe around the same?
pretty
or-
much.
Really.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think and I don't know that there's any. I don't know that there's any lessons that you can teach to know that, but I think when you're a creator trying to break in and trying to understand, you got to learn to read people, right? It's like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, am I am I pushing the boundaries have I seen Larry Hama way too many times? Should I wait a month before I go to see him?
Mhm.
Or maybe I should see someone else, or maybe I should make sure I work on and I'm sure he did work on the things that Larry told him to do. But you got to learn to read people, and when people are they'll give you these signs that, okay, you've come to see me enough. I'm not seeing enough improvement in your work. I need to see that before you come back.
I know. Didn't was it Neil Adams and Frank Miller? I remember I heard the story that Frank Miller kept coming to Neil Adams, and Neil Adams kept being really harsh. But again, he became kind of his mentor and kept giving Frank, go do this. But Frank really took it to heart and really tried to improve. But I remember hearing that story.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's, I can't remember where I heard that from, but I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. Well, I've heard Jim Shooter say the same kind of thing about Frank Miller. Basically, Frank Miller was a sponge.
Yeah.
When he was young, coming into the Marvel offices, and that he could, they could talk to him about a lot of different things, and Frank would just take it all and just, soak it up and learn.
Right.
So a couple comments here. Stephen Brown says, "I'm trying to get 2 comics going, but I'm focusing on just one."
Good idea.
Yeah, John
Yeah.
says it's a good idea. Aaron, you saying yeah?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's weird for me saying yes since I'm attempting to do 2 at once.
Yeah, well,
One great comic
yeah,
is
yeah.
better than one great comic is better than 2 okay comics.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the thing is, you get the first one going, and then the second one will be easier to get going.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to, do both of them at the same time, then like John said, you may end up with 2 that are just but if you can spend your, and I often say the same thing when it comes to the creative aspects of comics. I see a lot of young artists who want to do everything. And when you look at their stuff, they're just so at all of it. And you're like, well, okay, do you want to be just a so writer, so penciler, so inker, so colorist, or do you want to be good at one of these things and you grow that way? It's not says you can't. There's plenty of creators who do that. But if you look at those more times than not, and again, there's always examples that you can say, well, but this this creator, of course, but you'll find, I think, more times than not, one of those creators was really good at one thing, and then they branched out to teach themselves the other things. So yeah, Benny Powell says, I've been working with Photoshop since its first version decades ago, and I'm still learning things about it constantly. Yeah.
But yeah, they said people who certified, like they've asked people who've like certified as Photoshop professionals, say they still know like maybe 25% of the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roberta, I think
Yeah.
what was the first, because I know Malibu was in on the very early versions. What version was the earliest version of Photoshop do you remember at Malibu?
I believe 3.5.
3.5?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, that was way early.
All I remember was it had a channel limit, alpha channel, you know, could only go
Really?
to like 12, and then it was full.
Cannot compute.
So we had to decide what to save as a selection.
That's funny. Wow. So
Yeah.
are there no limits now?
I've never really wanted to have a list that long in my life. So,
So
I'm
if
sure
there
there
is a
is
limit,
one.
you haven't reached it, right?
Nah, I don't need to. It does what it needs to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And this probably, you know, as a lot of software is, it's probably one of the things that they got feedback on is that, hey, we need more channels.
Well, the biggest thing
Benny says,
was
Larry.
speed. You know, it would chug, chug,
Yeah.
chug, chug, chug.
Yeah.
So now it doesn't do that.
But do you think that some of that has to do with the power of your computer too, though?
Probably. Yeah, I would think so, even though I thought we had good computers, and I know we did.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think, you know, it just wasn't quite there.
Yeah. No. Well, yeah, and I know a lot of stuff. Even I can remember, you know, not quite 10 years before that, going to college and using my Commodore 64, which was kind of, you know, roughly topish of the line of personal computers back then, and having to, you know, load all the software in with a cassette tape. You know, I remember going from a cassette tape to the 5 1/4-inch floppy drives and thinking, man, I am all that and a bag of chips now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, Roland's like, yeah, I remember them fancy moving images they had in that box.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I have told the story before. I may have told it on here too. I can remember, you know, so I had email dating back. I've had email dating back to the late 80s, right? Probably,
Yeah.
can't remember, probably 89 was when I first got it. So, you know, I had email even when I, you know, moved out to California, took the job there, worked on all the computers. And when we moved back to, when my wife went back to graduate school, she to start on her PhD, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was, we were in the dorms and she was talking about this or that on the internet, right? And now I had been a part of the bulletin boards. I'd been poking around on all those things and, you know, seeing all the comic guys on there. And she started talking about this thing. So I said, no, you're not seeing that. She kept saying, yes, I am. I'm like, no, I don't think so. She's like, no, I'm telling you what I'm seeing. And I'm like, no, I you must be mistaken, right? That's what I'm telling her. I'm like, you must be mistaken because that's not the way it is, right? And of course, and so I said, well, let me go to your office with you. So the next day, or I don't remember, a couple of days later, whatever, I went to her office and said, show me what you're talking about. She sat down and opened Mozilla. I think it was Netscape. It may have been, but it was an early Mozilla, right? And she popped that thing open and I said, what is that? And I sat down in her chair and 30 minutes later, she said, you got to go. I got to get to work, right? And I was like, what is this web stuff, right? And I immediately went back to my desk and installed Mozilla and just opened a whole new, and this was probably around 97. You know, but anyway, Benny said, Larry is honest, but one of the best. He's an amazing artist as well as a writer. I don't know that there's anyone on here who would disagree with that.
No, that's the reason why I wanted a critique from him.
Yeah.
And courted him for months before the con.
Yeah, Stephen Brown said Greg told the story in a YouTube video that he saw. So basically saying, yep, he saw the same thing. Dempsey said, expand your social circle, get as much different feedback as possible, which I absolutely agree. Benny still talking about Photoshop. He says, that's why I still deal in layers rather than channels. It's a holdover from the beginning. Stephen then said 2 different stories. One I'm fixing up to send back to Image, and the other I'm working on now to send to both Image and Dark Horse. Yeah, you know, I always tell my students that when you've got something you're working on, you need to make a pecking order list, right? You need to make it say, if I had my choice, I would go to this publisher, right? And when that publisher tells me no, I'm going to go to this publisher. And when that publisher tells me no, I'm going to make your pecking order of your top 10 choices, right? And just start at the top and start sending those stories out and giving them the opportunity to look at it. You know, chances are the chances are greater they're going to say no than they're going to say yes. But you want to give them that opportunity, and you want to make sure that they say, you know, yes or no. They can't say yes if you don't give it to them, right?
I think that's an interesting kind of question I pose all of you, is because I think there's a fine line, right, between being persistent but also being aware. Like, in other words, you know, sometimes it's somebody will say, well, you know, send out your portfolio or send out your samples, you know, or keep sending it. But I think there's also the fine line where if you aren't listening to the advice, or you're not improving and you're just kind of like shotgunning everywhere, that's another thing too, right? I mean, that's kind of a balancing act, wouldn't you say? Or how, you know, what would be your thoughts on that?
Well, Does somebody else want to chime in?
Not yet.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I get in this little focal zone.
No, that's all
with
right.
my color.
I say that the portfolios that are more memorable, absolutely, because and you say, well, which ones are more memorable? I can't answer that. You know, that's probably a different person, a different thing for different viewers. But for me, you know, if I give you specific feedback, you know, hey, you don't have any backgrounds here. I don't know where these characters are operating, and I'd like to see a little more backgrounds. And if you keep sending me pages with no backgrounds, ultimately I'm going to stop looking, right? I'm just going to say, oh, look, person X sent me pages again. This is the 5th time after I told them to add backgrounds. I'm not even going to open them, right? But if the next page you send me has backgrounds, I'm going to say, oh, cool. They listened to what I said. There's backgrounds here. Let me give it another look. What else can I comment on to help you achieve what you want to achieve? So yeah, I say you absolutely need to do that. But you know, the other thing is this, all right? So now for stories, it's a little tougher, okay? Because you can send your story out to 10 different editors, and you're going to get 10 different perspectives of what you should do to your story to make it good for them, right? So, excuse me, one of the things I always say is, when you get feedback from your story, you know, if you're soliciting 10 different people to give you feedback on your story, number one, you know, examine the source, right? If Roland comes back and says you need more spandex, right? Then you got to look at Roland, look at what he's doing and other kinds of. If John gives you feedback and he says you need more blood, right? Then John's like, why me the blood, right? You know, you got to say, okay, well, here's the kind of thing that John likes. Here's what he does. If Aaron gives you feedback and he says you need more godlike characters, right?
I was gonna say more.
Get rid of those sound effects. That's what. Yeah, that's what I was gonna get rid of the sound effects, right?
Yeah, but you have to be aware of the source, right? And that's not to suggest that any source should be discredited, but you have to be aware of the source. But take all of your comments and put them in a big vat and stir that vat up. Because here's the deal. Nobody's going to give you, nobody that you trust anyway, nobody's going to give you comments to purely be mean and to not help you. Now, not everybody knows how to say it, right? You can show something to someone and they're going to say something and you're going to say, well, yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. I've got that. You might say, yeah, but I've got that there. Okay. But what you have to do is you have to examine the comment to say, okay, well, they said this sucks. What does that really mean? And look for, drill down and look to the root, because again, they're not just saying that, to be mean. They're saying it because this is an opinion they have. So figure out, what is it about this thing that's making them say that, right? And it may not be that it sucks as bad as they say, but there still could be a problem there that this could help you be aware of. So
I've actually got a story that can kind of coincide with this.
Yeah, tell it.
My first critique that I ever got, first inking critique, I got it from Diana Greenlay, inker based up in Canada. She's done work here and there, even done some work for the first Deadpool movie. All right. She said, sure, yeah, I can give you a critique. And she gave me a really, really flat out, blunt, harsh critique.
Yeah.
And it's the first critique I've ever had that way. I sat back and after processing and understanding, well, everybody tells me the comic industry is hard.
Huh.
It's hard to get through and to make it in. And of course, she gave me some of her reasons why, like I was using tech pens at the time because I thought, okay, this is how I need to do this. And she's like, I can tell you use tech pens and I can tell you why. And she broke it down and all that. Now I only use a brush for 99.9% of the work I do.
Wow.
Yes, I'm inking those planes with a brush.
Cool.
But after I got through some of the anger at first and really thought about what I was being told, because obviously I thought it was decent, but I was wrong. And I agree with it totally. But after I went back through and I thought about it and actually analyzed what she was telling me,
right,
I realized, reset, regrouped, and redid.
Yeah. That's excellent. That's a fantastic story, John. And that's exactly the way but it's taught, like you said, you were mad. And that's because, as creators, we try to tell ourselves, oh, it's just a business. Yeah, but we get emotionally involved with this.
Yeah, that's my thing. I was actually emotionally involved. I had put so much into trying. And you got to keep in mind at the same time, too, I was working on bringing myself out of a really dark hole in my life as well. So that kind of added to it as well. And it kind of made me question, well, was it worth it?
Yeah.
And then I thought back and said, well, no, it is worth it because I remember how I felt when I was doing this.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So there's a little extra in there.
That's great. Yeah.
But that's, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, John, one of the things you talk about the pens and the brushes, one of the biggest problems I see when it comes to inks today is an overuse of a pen or a pen look.
You're talking about tech pens.
Yes, I'm sorry, tech pens. Yeah, someone who doesn't understand the idea of thick and thin. I see a lot of inks that I look at and go, well, I can do that. I can take a pen and go over the line. I can trace, I can take a pen and trace and it's all going to be the same size. And I've seen some people who I like, I see, and I don't mean the word, but people who I like and they want to work and I see their work and I'm like, you got to stop using a ballpoint pen. It's what it look. You're using a ballpoint pen to ink this, and it's all the line is the same width all the way around. It looks like a coloring book, and there has to be some point where you know, for the inkers, you got to understand, you need some variety, you need weight to some of your lines, and when they all are the same width, you're getting zero weight.
I think
You
that a
know,
little bit has to do, maybe come from, this is going to sound weird, but like manga and anime, because you look at most animation is done in one line width just because it's moving.
Mm.
And so I think
But I see in manga,
some people are inspired by that and they start to do that, because most of the time, every time I see the stuff you use, like the tech pins or whatever, mostly those people started out an anime or whatever and then moved into drawing other characters. So they draw anime and then they may draw Captain America. They're using anime, manga sort of inking styles in American, and I think you're seeing that pushed more into American.
but in
comics.
manga books, I see variation in lines.
Yeah, but not all artists. Some artists do. That's the one thing about, I will say they do that, but I mean, manga is so, I mean,
Because so many manga books are black and white, you have to have that
right.
variation in line in order to help sell the depth that you're
Well, and also
trying to
Yeah.
simulate.
They also use tones. They use half tones a lot.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the ones with the thinner lines, they really use the half tone to create the shape and the form. You know,
There is a difference. I mean, you can definitely tell, like, you know, a Joe Kubert to, like, you know,
I think everybody sees like Joe Mad. Back in the 90s, everybody saw Joe Mad stuff and didn't realize that Townsend was actually really, really awesome as an inker and was able to take Joe Mad's pencils and really translate them into something better than what they were.
I don't know. It's funny, you know, I don't know, because I know it also just could be ease of use. I know that sounds stupid. Maybe this is kind of lazy artist. A tech pen, you know, it's just easier to buy a bunch of those than a brush and ink. And, you know, I use a brush for almost all of my inking when I do inking, like John. But, you know, brushes and welding. And I think some kids are just, you know.
Well, you have to learn how to control it. I think, you know, is because, you know, it's got those little horsehairs at the end, and you gotta learn how to control.
Even a brush pen that has a solid brush, you still have to control the amount of pressure that you're using.
I never liked those brush pens. I mean, I understand what they're getting at, but people buy them, and I'm like, if you bought like a $20 brush and a bottle of ink, that would last you 10 times longer than the brush pen.
That's true, but
the brush pens are like, they go out like that. Yeah,
they're better. They're more portable.
They are more portable.
And they're easier to take the cons.
Right.
Or to a job.
But just for the money sink and buying those pens over and over. Yeah.
Well, so, I got Tombow brush pens, and I've got the Pentel brush pen, which is actually synthetic brush hairs.
Okay, all right.
And both of them work well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I use the soft Tombow brush. I don't use the firm one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just have my Winsor & Newton number 2, and I use a 0 that floats around too, but mostly number 2.
But I've got a number 2 Raphael Sable that I use too at the house.
Yeah. The one thing I could never get my mind around was the quill pen. People who can ink with quill pens do good, have my utmost respect. I could do okay at it.
Too much pressure, too little pressure, it doesn't work.
It feels like my artwork's in bro afterwards. Like, you know, you could just feel my artwork, feel the lines and scratches in there. So, but yeah, I never could grasp it.
You feel the lines with a pen, with a brush. I don't know what they're talking about.
So yeah, that's true.
Stephen Brown says, as Todd McFarlane says, always bet on them saying no, and then you're rarely wrong. He's talking about submitting your work.
Yeah.
And
but it's kind of funny. So, on a professional coming from the other side, where do you think the line goes between taking the advice they give you and sticking to your own vision, knowing that you're onto something?
Well, go ahead, Curtis.
Oh, no,
and then I think that would be something with an artist. Yeah.
What I think I'm kind of, and this is kind of gathered from what everybody's saying is, it's like, consider the source. Like, in other words, if you want to be, if you epitomize to have an aspect of Todd McFarlane, then if you go specifically to Todd McFarlane and he says, look, this is what you got to work on, you got to take him. Or if you like writing and you go to Chris Claremont, that's fine. Now, if you go to somebody who's not necessarily in your vein and not necessarily what you're trying to achieve, I'd say you can take it or leave it. But if you said that these are the people that I aspire to be like, you damn well better listen to them. When they give you the advice. And the other thing the other thing I always find is an interesting balancing act is it's like in any creative endeavor, if you have to over explain, then the art isn't doing the work, right? So it's kind of like one of those things like,
Right.
in our college or art class, you have the picture on the wall and teacher would say, I don't like what you did this. And you try and almost like explain, well, it's because I was trying to do this and I was trying to do that. And even if that gets the teacher or the person critiquing to go, I understand now, it still didn't land. That's the problem,
Right.
because that should be in the art. I mean,
Yeah.
there
It should
should
be
be
applied automatically. They
Yeah,
should be
it
able to
has to
see
be
it and see your
context.
intent.
yeah, it has to be. And that's, that's a thing, but that's my thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely one of those things. I think for me, I've taken advice from artists before, but most of my art training came from like fine art from colleges and stuff. Some artists here and there, but I was always kind of struck off. I mean, of course, I had my influences, but I always kind of tried to struck off on my own. I wanted to look different, and that could be to my detriment too, as far as a bonus. I mean, that could be kind of a dangerous game. And people who draw like Tom McFarlane will probably get more work if people buying it because like Tom McFarlane, people somebody who strikes out on their own. But if your style gets popular, like Joe Matt, Tom McFarlane, then the benefits could be tenfold. So it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit with that one. So
And I
Yeah.
think it depends on what you want. I mean, if you
Yeah.
want to, because you and I, I don't think I'm saying, if I am, Aaron,
Yeah.
please, reprimand me. I don't think I'm saying anything that you haven't also already said about your own art style. Is that, if you want to go work for Marvel and DC, then you probably need to try to draw in a style that
Yes.
is your style is not really something that you see in a Marvel and DC book.
No,
Yeah.
mine would actually be much more geared towards like even manga or anime a little
Yeah.
bit, pushing that
So
cartoon.
as an
Even
artist,
yeah.
you have to understand that okay, well, if you
Oh, yeah,
want to
absolutely.
work for Marvel or DC, then you're going to have to make some changes to your own style.
It was funny because I remember getting, and this was just weird. I tried to draw superheroes and stuff, and I kept getting bored with it, and it was kind of a bummer because I liked it. I read superhero comic books, but for some odd reason, I was drawing. I think it's like the shapes and the lines, the things that were involved in it weren't as exciting me as much as like animated cartoon, more cartoon. So I stretched more that side. Which it is what it is. But yeah, my friend told
Yeah.
me that I tried to draw a superhero. It was a ghost submission for Dark Horse, and he finally looked at me. He's like, "Look, I'm not trying to be rude." He's like, "But I just don't think superheroes are your thing." And I'm just like, you know what? You're right. They're not. They're not. You're right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he's just being honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I think that
yeah.
I think, and I this is something I talk about in my class a lot, particularly for students who come in who aren't familiar with comic books at all. They come in thinking that comic books are only Spider-Man and Batman, and I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? There's a lot more out there than that, and the problem is those are the loud ones, right? So just like dominating television and film today are superheroes, right?
Right.
Would you guys argue with that?
No.
I would say the fact that they have literally turned movies into television shows.
Yeah.
Like you have multiple movies, which I didn't
Yeah.
think that was possible,
Yeah.
but they've actually done that. I'm
Right.
like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah. So in the same way that superheroes, but that's not the only thing out there, right? There's plenty of other TV shows. There's plenty of other movies, right?
Right.
But they dominate because they that's what's big right now. Same for comic books, right? There's plenty of science fiction and romance and fantasy and action and horror. There's plenty of other comics out there. It's just the superheroes tend to be the loud ones, and that's the ones that everyone thinks of. And unfortunately, for those who don't know comics at all, they think, oh, well, that's all the comics are.
Do you think sometimes that could become a barrier to people who wanted to get into comics but that's all they see? Like,
Oh,
well, I don't really,
absolutely.
yeah, I don't want to,
Yeah, I
but
think so.
because they've seen lots of people who have like introduced different comics to them, and they're like, I mean, what?
Right.
Like these are other, like if you introduce like a kid to Bone, or
Right.
something, it's like, what this is like, yeah, it's weird. I think, and I don't know. I do feel American comics does have that problem of, I think there is a lot of variety in it. It's just not advertised as well as say manga. Manga
Yeah.
is, even though manga has its own tropes that it works on,
Right.
it does a good job of advertising the sheer variety in the genre more than American comics do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I think so. So Stephen went on to say, talking about portfolios still, he said, one guy told me to go back to drawing stick figures. That's harsh. Ooh.
Wow.
That's
Well, tell him years ago I saw a Kickstarter that a guy did a Stickman figure comic. He made like close to $1 million or something off this because it was a humor thing. So after that, I'm like, I have utmost respect for stick figure artists. So if your stick figures, you know,
what's the Cyanide and Happiness?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know,
and that stuff is just, I mean, it's great. It just depends on how you execute it.
Yeah.
Actually, I wonder if it was. It's been so long. I bet you, I wonder if it was a Sign That in Happiness Kickstarter. I wonder if that was, because that is a great comic. But it's dark. But it's definitely like basically stick figures. So yeah.
Yeah. Benny Powell said, "I've only ever seen a handful of good portfolios worth working with. Of those portfolios, I tried to work with each and every single one of them. Flaked. Of those portfolios, I tried to work with each of them, and every single one of them flaked." Yeah.
Sorry, Benny. It wasn't me though.
No,
it wasn't me. I wouldn't have flaked.
Well,
That's why I'm here with Roland.
So what's funny is I see these. I belong to several of these comic creators Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff, and I see often writers get on there and they're complaining about. I tried to work with this artist and they flaked, and this artist and they flaked, and then you got the smart artists that chime in and say, "Well, just pay them, just pay them," like as if more money is going to make them not flake. And of course, the thing I say is, here's the problem. I actually had a Marvel budget one time, right? And the artist was still late. It's like, what the heck? It doesn't matter. It's an artist is going to either want to draw and get it done, or they're not. They're going to want to do something else. And this is one of the, you guys know this is one of the reasons I stress so much here for Silverline is you guys got to be having fun, because if you're not having fun, then shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely, it's funny too, because I've seen so many artists, like you said, work really hard to get their first gig, and then they get their gig, and then they just, okay, I just don't want to do it. I'm like, then why'd you put all the effort into getting it if you just kind of, like, just, I see that a few times. Like, in other words, like, it's almost kind of like the dog chasing the car. Like, they caught the car, now they just don't know what to do with it, so they just kind of give up. It was a challenge or something.
Because it's like, it's one thing to get to the point to get successful. To stay successful is a whole nother game, and 10 times as hard. And when ego comes into it, it's even worse. It's like I think, what's that saying? It's like, be nice to the people who are helping you on the way up, because they'll be the ones waiting for you on the way down.
Yeah.
And I definitely think it's like, we're talking about from somebody, a newcomer going into the industry, or showing your portfolio or showing work. But you know what? The people, how they critique it or how they give you advice, how professional they are, that makes an impact too. I mean, I think some people get into that position of authority and forget that they have due diligence to maintain a professional manner with people who aren't in the industry. We're not in the industry yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. That's overlooked. Yeah.
I had that. It's funny because I had somebody do this in high school. I had a friend who we were high school kids, and some guy hired us to do this comic book. And we later found out his whole thing was to do a comic book to, like, basically Dark Horse didn't accept him, so he's going to do this comic book to show Dark Horse up or whatever. And I was like, what? I didn't know that till it was out, because he went up to Dark Horse, the convention. He's like, look at this, we're going to destroy you. And I'm just like, oh, come on, dude, But my friend,
that's not good
also
motivation.
got a story to do in there, and I remember, like, he would practice all the time, and then he got this story, and he waited till, like, he finished it like in one night. Like, he had like 2 weeks to do it, and then, like, the last 2 nights or night, he just like, well, I just had to get it done. I'm like, well, you finally got your break, and you sit around and just like do nothing, and then the last hour just cram it in, and it's like, it was like, but it came to come like almost like that ego. Like, it's like, well, I'm so amazing and great that if I turn in anything, they would just worship me. And I'm like, I don't really think that's how this works.
No, it's not. And I actually know somebody who's really, really awesome who did something at the last minute, and you could tell it was done at the last minute and not their skill level.
Yeah.
Well, I think the definition of a professional is whether you're paid or not. you do your best work. And it's the
Yeah.
same quality, whether it's a big
Mhm.
job or a small job, because whatever the job is, your name's on it, your reputation's on it. That's really what a professional is. There is no minor major leagues. It's all major leagues to somebody that's a professional, you know?
And that's it. Your name is on it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's a good point. You really do have to be comfortable with that reputation that you're dragging around now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then if
And
you
if-
create a big one, you have to live up to it.
Yeah. Like
so
Roberta.
don't no. I mean, I think that's the worst part is like you struggle and you think you suck. And then they're like, well, you know, you can do more. So I feel it
You can
blows you
suck
away.
more.
Did
I'm
you
like,
suck
what?
now?
Yeah.
You're not even there yet. We'll help you.
Well, just it's always a balance between your own ego and your own, fear of failure,
Mhm.
and then just not understanding where you fit in,
Yeah.
because you always feel different, I think, than what you see. Like
Yeah.
you have people you admire, but you always think, but they're way up there and they just do this, and
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's been said before, and this is, this is nothing new, but as creative people, we are our own worst critics, aren't we?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that keeps us practicing.
Well, I
Mhm.
think I told you the story. I got the portfolio reviewed one day, and this was my Deadluck comic, which actually, hey, I have that. I can show that in the picture, show you what this is. This is a better review. So this is a book I did a long time ago. And so the whole thing is written like a kid's book, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's all done for it's more of an adult story. It's not a kid's book. Just me playing with, it's like more like cartoon style or whatever.
Cool.
So I took this to Jim Valentino, and he didn't know quite what to make of this. He's like, I really like this. He's like, I wouldn't even begin to know how to sell something like this.
Yeah.
He's like, but if I saw it in a store, I would buy it. And I'm like, oh, that's like the best
That's a
compliment I got.
compliment.
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
an experiment. I went to another guy, the guy who owns Oni, and I think I talked to Roland. He
Yeah.
knows this guy, and he was like, you need to go back to drawing school. And I'm like,
Wow.
and so and literally in 30 minutes, getting such different personalities. that really was cementing it wasn't that they didn't know what they're talking about. It's just everyone approaches it from such different
Yeah.
fields and different viewpoints that you really just have to kind of there's a part of it's like take what you can from them, but you just kind of got to decide that what you want to do and go for it. Because
Right.
if you're running around trying to follow everyone's critique, you'll go nuts. You'll literally
Right.
go mad.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Well, and along the lines of being professional, one of the things that I think you really have to do is you've got to do your due diligence. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're going to submit to a publisher, you need to be aware of what they do. And if they don't hire people who draw like Marvel, and you draw like Marvel, then you shouldn't submit to them.
right.
Right? Because they're not going to hire you, because that's not what they do. And I think you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of what the publisher does, and only submit to them if you think you can fit within what they're already doing.
So don't send your Captain America samples to Fantagraphic books. That's just
No,
not.
exactly.
That's not gonna
Well, you're
work.
right, though.
Well,
Yeah, you're right.
I'd be very curious to hear if Roland remembers this, but like, for example, I remember when Marvel bought Malibu, there was a period where there was a lot of cross-pollination, let's just say, between the two companies, two studios or whatever you want to call it. And I'll never forget, somebody hired, do you remember Tim Vigil from Faust?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
He did a cover of the
Nightman
Nightman versus Wolverine. And I don't know what was going on editorially, but I just remember this thing came in, and it literally was Wolverine standing over a decapitated Nightman, holding his head, and just blood everywhere. And all I remember is one of the associate editors, or assistant editors, Gerald D. Victoria,
Yeah.
said that
Mhm.
that got sent to Marvel for approval. And I guess Mark Grunwald sent it back, and there was just a post-it note on the fax that just said no. And, and I was kind of
That's
listening
awesome.
because I was like, that's Tim Vigil. Like, what do you expect's going to
Yeah.
happen? You know, but
Well,
I
it's
don't know if
funny.
you know that story, but I don't know.
Yeah,
They
I
did
don't,
the
I don't. You know what? I don't remember sending it. I remember the cover,
Oh, it's
but
brutal.
I don't remember sending that to Marvel for approval.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I just remember it was jarring seeing
Because
you know.
it was
I
a
want to know
joke.
where this artwork's at.
Yeah.
You know
was
what?
vicious.
The thing about it is, it came through as a fax. And Scott Rosenberg walked in, who's the president of Malibu, walked into my office, and he goes, "Oh, is this the new night? Please tell me this is not the cover." He was real excited at first. "Oh, is this the Nightman? Oh, please tell me this is not the cover." I'm like, "No, that's not the cover. It's Tim Vigil, and he's messing around, and it's Tim, but it's Tim Vigil style. It's what
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you
that's-
expect
I'm gonna have
that
to
out of him."
message him and see if he still has that.
I asked him a couple years ago, and he was like, "Yeah, it's too many years. I don't. Yeah, I don't."
funny.
Strangely enough, do you guys remember the whole Spider Woman controversy where she was climbing over the building and she had like
Oh,
the
and
butt in the air?
yeah.
And
yeah.
everyone was like, "All this is obscene or whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's Miller Manera." And they're like,
Yeah,
"What?" And I'm like,
he's
"Do
an
you
erotic
not know what
artist.
Miller
What do you
Manera
expect?
does?"
Right? Yeah.
Most of his, I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like they're complaining it's over sexualized. I'm like, well, yeah, that's Miller Manera. I mean, what did you really expect?
Right.
It's, it's
Yeah.
again, like, you need to be careful what you order. I mean, if you're asking Miller Manera to draw Marvel ladies, you might get some pretty sexy Marvel ladies. You got
That's
to be
right.
careful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Vinnie Powell posted a Kickstarter link for those of you on Facebook. We were talking about the stick figures earlier, and it was the order of the stick reprint drive, and he got almost 15,000 backers,
Wow.
and they earned 1.254.
yeah, that must have been the one I saw.
Dollars. Yeah, is for their backers.
That's why every time somebody comes with me, is like, I can't draw. I can only draw stick figures. Or it's like, well, then come here. Let me show you something.
They made $1 million doing that.
I always tell him I can't draw stick figures.
Yeah,
I know.
So
I'm too good to draw stick figures. Like, not being arrogant, just like I'm too good. Like I want to fix it. I'm like, indicate I can't just freely draw stick figures now.
Yeah,
they have to be perfect.
I can't stop at a stick figure. That's how I explain it.
Yeah.
Wubba says, just a little devil's advocate. This is when we're talking about the artist here. He says some writers starting out are a pain to work with and make it just a miserable experience working with them. I'm sorry, Wubba. I love you, man. I don't.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, what's up, Quentin?
Hey, how's it going? What is up?
I'm here with the greats. Holy moly!
Not right this moment, sir. But are you going to be able to share some of those pages you've been sending me on the stream? Is that doable?
Well, I can move my phone around where you can see
Oh,
them.
okay. All right. Oh, well, don't do it right now. I'll holler at you in just a second.
Okay.
So yeah, well, I get that. Certainly there's going to be that on all sides, I think. Benny says, I've always only paid artists. This is when I was talking. I mentioned about I had Marvel, a Marvel budget to work with. And he says, I've always only paid artists up front. We have work for hire only, so money was not an issue. And yes, we pay Marvel rates. Meaning to say, back what he first said is that they flaked. And so, yeah, money's not always the issue for flakeism. Benny says, Roland, I disagree with that. While Marvel has a house style to agree, they have been open to new styles. Joe Mad, McFarlane, Bacchio, Gene Ha, the list goes on. It's something's well drafted, exciting. They do take chances on new styles, as do many good companies. Well, so I'm going to disagree with that, because I'm going to say everybody that you've mentioned, they're not really new styles. It's all Jack Kirby DNA. And Curtis and my old time buddy Ross Ritchie, who is the CEO over at Boom Studios, has a really good it's a really good I don't know theory. I don't know what you call it, but he and I had a really long talk one time about artists and styles. And so Joe Mad, McFarlane, Bakula Juhan, all of those guys have those guys have Jack Kirby DNA, and you could see it, right? Now they have a slightly different style, but it's all Jack Kirby DNA. It's all kind of that if you changed a few lines here and there, style of the lines here and there, then you've just got Marvel. You've got Marvel style, and yeah, you talk about West Coast style, which I know a lot of the Image guys were certainly in the 90s, but it's really all kind of the same. You don't see, well, I haven't, I will, let me confess this. I haven't read a new Marvel DC book in a decade, so I don't know
we
what.
lost the stream.
What? I don't know what they're doing today. So what I'm about to say may be incorrect, but I know at one point in time you would never see a manga style art in there. Now you saw American influenced, like I would say, oh shoot, the guy who died a few years ago. Did some work at
Turner, Michael Turner.
No, he's a very Image guy. He did some work at Malibu. Michael Ringo.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, Ringo. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I would say Ringo's style was heavily influenced by manga, but he still had that American. He still had that Jack Kirby DNA in it, right? So what I'm talking about is things like Lumberjanes, right? If you look on the art for Lumberjanes, there's no Jack Kirby DNA in that at all. In fact, a lot of those artists have no idea who Jack Kirby is, and that's okay, right? That's not a wrong thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just that's not what they grew up with. And so that's what I say when I say Marvel's not open to new styles. I would say that Marvel's not. I would so based on what Benny said, I would tweak what I said initially to say Marvel's not really open to a style that doesn't have Kirby DNA. And all of those styles I think are different, yeah. But Marvel's always done that. Marvel's always had slightly different styles going back to George Perez and guys like that when they were coming on. Those were all a little bit different, but they all had the Jack Kirby DNA.
You're talking about more like Jack Kirby's like foreshortening and the bombast, that sort of energy in his style.
The energy,
the foreshortening, like he's punching at the screen and the I would agree. It's fun. I think it also do with storytelling. When you said Lumberjanes, I mean that's a completely different story. I mean, trying to imagine Lumberjanes as like a Joe Mad style doesn't work. That just wouldn't work at all. So I think that's to do with some of the DNA of the storytelling too. And Marvel they do superheroes. So even if you change the style, you still have to, I see what you're saying. You still have to have that sort of foreshortening, action pack, that sort of DNA of Jack Kirby and those other artists. Like it has to still be superhero excitement.
Yes.
In there.
If you don't, you get 1950s DC comics.
Those are great.
Benny said, talking about Tim Vigil, he said Tim is awesome. He did an unsolicited cover for us and we used it. Tim Vigil's an awesome dude. In fact, Curtis, you may remember the Faust team, David Quinn. David Quinn wrote some stuff for us there at the very end of the Malibu stuff. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep, I loved working with David Quinn. Yeah, good guy.
Very cool.
Wubba says, Roland, man, you're awesome to work with. Big bro hug to you, Wubba. So let's see. Let me make sure I didn't skip any here. I think we're all caught up on the messages there. So Quentin. So we're talking about Quentin joined us late. So you know what? Let me give a little pregnant pause here for future podcast. And now let's remember that Daytona Beach Comic Con is a sponsor of the Silverline streams. So you're laughing, Curtis, but Brett and I have been working on some of the have any of you listened to the podcast by any chance?
I haven't yet, but I totally want to.
I don't even know where they're posted.
Dude, they're posted anywhere you can find reputable podcasts.
Okay. I'm not a big podcast listener, so I need to go find these reputable podcasts.
I'm hoping that we'll get folks who would normally watch a live video that will listen to some podcasts. So Quentin's joining us here. Quentin, tell folks who you are. Give yourself an introduction.
Well, I'm Quentin Bedwell, artist. I've just always done art. I currently, as a day job, work as a graphic artist for Gandy Inc. over in Texas, San Angelo, Texas. And I do comics on the side. I've been doing comics for years, but a lot of people didn't know about it because I was kind of doing them in my own time. And
welcome to Indie Comics.
Yeah, exactly. I did put out a comic a few years ago, but I do all kinds of stuff. I've got a game that I've published, a board game that I developed and published, and I actually have two of those. And yeah, just saw Silverline. I hadn't talked to Roland in years, and man, it was just really great to look over and see what he was doing, and I saw this greatness going on. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Man,
You're
I started looking into all the people tied to it, and I was like, wow, this is great. And
a lot of fun, right?
Yeah, just the mission statement of everything is what really snagged me, because it's classic. And man, comics today, they're really needing it. I mean,
Yeah,
they've just really went. I mean, the stuff that you do see in the stores, I wonder sometimes now, the kind of material that we're not seeing.
Yeah.
If this is the story that we're seeing, I mean, I wonder after, what the story was like before all the diversity crews got in and made their changes, and all these other factions made their changes,
Right.
I really like the idea of being able to do a story because it's cool, and do some art because it's cool, and without restraints.
Yeah. Now, are you okay with me mentioning a little bit of our history?
Yeah, I was actually just waiting on you for.
Okay. So Quentin and I go back several years. I'd have to dig into my email and my files and stuff to give you a more accurate, but probably 10 years, maybe. Would you say?
I'm so sorry, Quentin. Yeah. And I say that because I've known Roland longer than I've known you. So sorry, Quentin.
All right, John. I thought I liked you.
You still like me.
Okay, all right. So what happened? And I can't remember exactly, but so Quentin, help me out here. I probably saw some of your artwork on a website or an artist thing, and I dropped you an email and said, "Hey, I like your art. Let's talk." Is that about right?
Exactly how it went. Yep. I just came off of doing the book that I'd been working on, and I guess you had saw that, or maybe some of the artwork that I had posted or something. And did you visit Pencil Jack? Did you post some of your work on Pencil Jack? I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I've stayed pretty much, just the main sites.
Well, I was going to say about 10 years ago, I used to visit. There's about 4 sites pretty regular. Pencil Jack was one of them. Deviant Art was like one of the last ones I would go to. But CBR had a place where people artists would post pages and stuff like that. And so I suspect it was on one of those sites. But so anyway, so Quentin and I began an internet relationship, and we began to swap in messages and emails and things like that. And we actually started a story together. And I think we got, 4 or 5 pages into it. And to be honest with you, I don't remember exactly what happened. But I remember it just didn't happen. And then I know Quentin was focused on a game then, and then that's what you spent the next several years working on.
Yeah.
And we always kind of kept in touch.
Yeah, what happened right at that particular time was right after I had begun everything. I had had some life stuff come up. I had 2 kids after 15 years.
Yes.
We had the Lord, he's got a sense of humor, and he just dropped 2 kids. They're 11 months apart. My dad passed away, and then not too long after that, my mom passed away. It was just like crazy, and I just had to kind of, how it is, you guys. Y'all live, y'all know how it is. It's just
Somebody had to tell Quentin how that was happening.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness, it's like we
Does
have
he need to
so
have it explained again? We may get kicked off of YouTube.
I know,
Nope,
right?
nope. Nope, we're good.
We have a 20-year-old daughter, Brooklyn, and then 15 years later, just out of nowhere, I mean, out of nowhere, just we've got another one. And then it's like, okay, we can do this, we can do it. But then she, after that was all resolved, it was like, just a few weeks later, I knew by the look on her face, and I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And that's what, but
So-
you say the words out loud like, it's okay, we can do it. But in my head, I'm thinking, we are so much in trouble. I don't even know what we're gonna do. But we did it. And
So for Christmas that year, his wife handed him a pair of clipping shears. She said, "Here."
Yep. Yep.
Michelle, hey Michelle, what's up? She says, "Hey Roland, good to see you here." Well, I see you. You know what I mean. See you. Wubba says Quinn and Vigil differ so much from their personality to what they actually do for comics. They're so chill in person, yet so insane over the top in the comics they produce. Yeah, I'll agree with that. When I met Quinn, I thought he was going to be some psycho, knife wielding maniac guy. But it's like, dude, you're the guy who writes this. He said, "Yeah, I know, right?" Yeah, it was fun working with Quinn. Quinn actually did. I'm trying to remember. I think he did. It was either a Rune thing or a Nightman thing. I can't remember now. It's funny that Ultraverse page on Facebook, they're always pulling stuff up, and they're like, "Hey, this stuff," and I'm like, I don't remember that. It's like, yeah, cool. So Quentin so what brings Quentin around this time around is, as he said earlier, is he was listening to a bunch of our streams and chiming in, and we began to again, we never really stopped emailing. They just became real infrequent, and so we began to chat again, and he was like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And so I said, "Hey man, do you want to draw some more?" And he said, "Hey man, yeah." And so
those are the actual words.
Y'all are great with freaking words, I tell you.
Well, long story short, we found a project for him, and the writer, who I hope to we're going to get on here soon, is another former student of mine. She's fantastic. Her name is Mackenzie. So if Mackenzie's listening, hey Mackenzie. Hope. But what happened is, kind of just before Quentin could really kick it into high gear, Flormonte came up with an idea for Trumps, because Thomas Hedgeland had essentially said, "Hey, man, I can't finish this. I'm going back to school and all this kind of stuff." So Tommy said, "Hey, look, why don't you get well, no, actually what happened, so let me backtrack a little bit. So I reached out to Quentin and said, "Hey, I really need this finished. Can we finish this first before you jump onto this project with Mackenzie?" And Quentin was like, "Hey dude, I just want to draw comics, man." Right? And I'm like, "Okay, cool." Well, Tommy, like right about that same time, Tommy says, "Well, why don't you get a different artist for each issue? Because that way, you've got four suits, spades, clubs, diamonds, and hearts." And he goes, "You'll have a different artist for each book." And I'm like, "Dude, that's a great idea." And so we've already started talking about covers and things like that. And so I said something to Quentin. He's like, "Hey man, I just want to draw." And so that's when I reached out to Peter, and Peter's actually working on issue number 4. So Quentin, let's boot Curtis off. It's
Well, I can move I can move my
Show
camera
us, show us some of
around.
the. Okay, show us some of the Trump's pages there.
Did the fart panel make it?
no. Stephen asked, would a splash page count as 1 or 2 pages? A splash is a single page. A double page spread is an image that takes 2 full pages. So there's a difference between a splash and a 2-page spread. So a splash page is just a single page. Michelle said, who's working on what right now? I see 6 people. Michelle, you missed the introductions. We did at the top of the hour, but what you were looking at Curtis drawing on Shadow Ghost, which is his project that he's working on for the future. That was one of the early pages. Was that page 2, Curtis? What?
Yeah, actually, you're right. It is page 2.
Page 2, yeah.
So, needs a kung fu master, so be careful what you say about his
That's
comment.
right. So what we're looking at now, Brett, is there any way you can blow Quentin's screen up, or is that a no? Okay.
I can zoom in a little if I need to as well.
Well, I think Brett can put you in speaker mode, and okay, whatever. So this is a page.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're not doing it right.
So this is a page, you guys. Take a peek at this. This is page 1 for Trump's issue number 3 or book 2. Yeah. So can you swipe through and show another page or 2? Okay.
Looks good.
Yeah, look at that.
I love that.
There's you a splash page
Nice.
there. Yeah,
that's gorgeous.
I love that pose.
You know,
and see, yeah.
I wasn't aware of you and Quentin's relationship, but you know, we were talking via, you know, from the show, and I looked him up and I said, dang, this guy's art's really good. I said he should be part of Silverline. And then about a week later is when you announced it, and I was like, yes, great. Like, why isn't Roland talking to this
Great
guy?
minds, Curtis.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. So this is fantastic stuff. Quentin, we'll have to get you hooked up with Tommy, and Tommy will because you're drawing on a tablet there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Tommy's he's our tech guy. He can get you figured out how to get you hooked up so you can actually stream the art. I don't have the answers to that, but Tommy can answer that.
Yeah, we'll have to definitely figure out how to do all that. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at now.
Yeah, very cool.
And that's book 3.
Yes, issue 3. It's actually book 2, but it's issue 3 because book 1 was 2 issues.
That's right.
And book 2 will also be 2 issues, but we'll break them down into issues 3 and 4, if that makes sense.
That looks great, Quentin. I love the volume on everything. Like you can see like the shape of the knuckles, the muscles, and it's just really solid.
I appreciate it. I have really worked on that, you know, and I've tried to do things to simplify stuff. And, you know, people say, hey, why don't you just not put so much, you know, it'd probably go a lot quicker. But, you know, I just really have one way of doing it that I know. And I have tried to like streamline it, and I do streamline it, but it just, you know, when I was working on that board game, I had so many pieces of art to do for it. I mean, it ended up being close to 180 pieces of art, just me. And I did get into a little bit more of a streamline, but it didn't look quite as good. I just, you know, I got through with it, and it as a whole, it looked good. But you know what I mean? You kind of look over it, and it's, but yeah, I love this style, but then again, you know, I can't really. I've tried doing other ways, and you know, it just doesn't work.
You gotta do you.
Yeah,
Michelle
that's
said
what
that
it
looks so
is.
good.
That's what it is. You really have to just do what you're comfortable with, because every time that I've tried to change and try to be a little more this way or a little more that way, it just, you know, it just doesn't work. It just, I have to, you know, an artist's stuff is like their signature. You know, everybody has their own signature, and you just write how you're going to write. And if somebody comes along and tells you, or you say even, hey, I like that guy's signature, I wish I could write a little bit more like him.
Right.
You know, you can try as you may, but it's just not gonna come out. You know, your signature will always be yours.
I think
Yeah.
any artist, and I think you can too, you can mimic any artist, but
Yeah,
in
you
other
can.
words, I think what you're saying is if you're just drawing on your own, you're going to slip back. And I found this too. Like I could try to mimic somebody's art, but after a while, I'm just going to slip back into my own style because
Oh,
it's just
yeah.
my natural. Because I'm not paying attention. I may not be paying attention and stuff. And then Roland's just going to have to like what he's going to get. That's it.
Yeah. So Benny Powell said, something to note on double page spreads. Please, artists, always make sure certain it is an even odd page. So often I get a double page
Yes.
spread layout
Yeah.
and it will be on
Yep.
page 5 and 6. That don't work, people. No, it does not work. Hey, Roberta, you want to share?
Sure, I could share.
Okay.
Also, the other
Um,
thing with double page spreads, make sure that you, because the page is going to dip in the middle. Don't draw faces in the middle of the page.
Right, don't put 'em in the crack.
I've seen that so
Yeah.
many times. I'm
Yeah.
like, or the lettering, when they do lettering, the lettering dips. I'm like, okay, I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
But thank you.
So
Also,
there's
any
this-
portion that could be done like this by
Yeah.
accident, that is not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this great double page spread that Stephen did for Cray. This goes back. Here you go. Here's an example of what Stephen. You know I love you, man. But here's an example of what not to do. Right? You see, Cray is right smack dab in the middle there.
Oh,
Yeah. He's
Oh,
right in the
yeah.
crack.
Right in the
Yeah.
plum.
He's
Yeah.
right in the crack. Right?
I
Smack
wish I could
dab
see
in the
his
middle.
face. Yeah.
I know you can't see his face, but there he is, right? Right in the middle there.
Man,
Yeah.
what did you?
Peekaboo.
What
This
did he say when you sent that to him? Did he say anything about that? Was he like, was it a
I-
lesson learned for
I
him?
assume it was a lesson learned for him. This goes back to early
Yeah.
90s. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
I bet
I'm-
you that
I'm ass-
original art is awesome though. Like if you were to buy
Yes.
that piece,
Right.
holy moly.
Yeah.
yeah. But see, this one is much better, right? Because there's nothing important in the crack.
Right.
Yeah.
You
you
can
know,
see it.
Yeah.
He
there's
learned
several double page
later on.
spreads here. Well, I don't know if I think it's the same book. But so I don't think that he was able to see that printed before. See, this is a great one too, right? This is the first one.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Because you get the big dude on the horse here,
Yeah.
and the arrow going over here, the important
Man, that
face
is
there. So,
nice.
Really
Yeah.
nice.
That is nice.
yeah. So, but I just remember that one page. It's like, dude, I can't see the main guy in the middle of the right there. He is. Yeah. So that's pretty funny. So yeah, Benny is absolutely right. You gotta watch it. And I'd also say it starts with the writers because my class was one of the things I make sure that to teach the writers is like, look, you don't do this. You don't try to put a double page spread on an odd even combination because it doesn't work. Literally, it does not work. It's just physically impossible, right?
So
Michelle says, does Quinn do coloring too or strictly black and white?
here we go.
Quentin, sorry,
I
she
do
said
it all.
Quinn.
Yes.
Yeah, he can do it all. I'm sorry, she said Quinn, and I'm thinking, we're talking about David Quinn,
Mhm.
right? But she meaning Quentin. Yeah, he does it all. And Benny Powell said, like Whitney Houston says, crack is whack. Steven says, hey Roland, do you remember the double page spread I showed back at Infinity Toys convention? Unfortunately, I am sorry, Steven, I don't. If you showed it to me, I would probably remember. I tend to be a more visual guy anyway, so if you showed it to me, I would probably remember. But I unfortunately just talking about it, I can't conjure anything up. Michelle says, I remember that specifically from class. Yeah, absolutely. We talk about this, and I deduct when they get it wrong. I deduct, and see, I won't let them put splash pages on an odd numbered page either. I will only let them put splash pages on an even numbered page, right? Because of the way you do the page turners. But I still get them, and anyway, we talk about that. So Roberta, before we dive on in further, You want to talk briefly about what you're what we're going to watch you color here?
Yeah, this is an issue 3 of Pendulum, and it is a 4-part series. So it's one of the 90s remixes.
Yeah. Yep.
And so you see the scrunchie she's wearing. That's trademark. And the long sweater. Love the long sweater.
Yeah. You know, one thing I noticed too about in looking at some of these some of the remix comics, you don't see any cell phones in them.
Yeah.
No.
You know.
Yep.
You know,
You do. There's a mobile phone in the car, and that's really funny.
Take a break.
The big,
the great big
long
one.
antenna, forward reaching. I mean, it's kind of funny.
You know, I saw an interview with James Wan, the director of The Conjuring and Annabelle and those horror movies, and he was saying he specifically chooses his movies to be set in the 80s and backwards, so that in the horror movie they can't pull out their cell phone and call the police.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, it would be
it's
very
just
different
too hard
now.
nowadays, he said.
Benny says, I tell writers really try not to give layout guides to artists beyond bare bones. Like if I need a lot of dialogue or captions, I will give directions that way, but I have never said double page spread here. So that's kind of an interesting idea, because I'm not sure how, Benny, if you have one that you could share, I would love to be able to see the kind of script that you're talking about, because I only know of scripts that actually say page 1, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, page 1, page 2. And so when you have a double page spread, you literally have to say, pages 2 and 3, double page spread, so that you tell the artist that's what you're doing. So I would be curious to see what format, and of course, for those who are listening, the comic formats, script formats particularly, they're wide open. Whatever works for you and your artist, or your editor, if your editor requires something, it really doesn't matter in the end how it's done, because they're so flexible. And this is one of the things that I know frustrates a lot of my television and film students when they get into my class, is that it's like, okay, well, the main thing you've got to do is you have to be consistent. Whatever you do it that way all the time. So Benny says he does a combination between Marvel and full script format. So I would love if you're able to share any, or if you've got one that you are able to share, I would certainly love to see that, because because again, there are so many different styles. I would love to kind of see what you do. Michelle says, I love her style. Reminds me of reading my dad and grandpa's comics. Yeah, she says, write a love letter to your illustrator. That's exactly what I tell them in class. Yep. So Quentin, I don't know how much of the first part you heard, but this was our professionalism take 2. You got any thoughts on professionalism that you want to share?
Oh man. Be nice. be on time. Be available and willing to do whatever you need to do. And me, I am pretty professional. My wife, though, she is like the epitome of professional. I can always tell when I'm in trouble, because she starts getting in her professional mode.
Does she call you Mr. Bedwell?
Yes, and that's why parents give you middle names, just so you know when you're in trouble.
Right.
Yeah. Because they say them all 3. So,
yep.
Or however many you have. But anyway, that's pretty much my thoughts. Is it is so good. The workday can go along so much more smoothly when everybody is being professional, and it's just so much more efficient. Now, my personal thing is, I try not to usually joke around a whole lot when I get in with the new group of folks, just because I don't know what their
Yeah.
what they're about, So usually I have a little bit of a problem with somebody who's joking with me like I've been there 10 years, before I even really know them. I don't really know how to take that.
You're like, don't be telling my mama jokes yet.
Yeah, so I like to kind of be a thermostat first, to kind of see what people's temperature is, and then kind of get a little bit looser. But for the most part, I'm just a pretty loose guy until until I get around somebody who I can tell this person really is not down with fun. So maybe I should just kind of cut the dad jokes a little bit or something, till
Oh,
we get to know each
you
other a
should
little
never
better.
cut dad jokes.
I know, right?
My son loves them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quentin sounds almost kind of like me. I kind of sit back and feel things out before I go anywhere further.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always a good idea to do that. It's and you're there to do a job, whatever it is, and all that stuff is extra, and you don't want the extra stuff coming in and ruining what the job is,
right?
Just because of something that's just neither here nor there,
Mm-hmm.
So professionalism is great. Like I say, my wife, she's super professional. I mean, she is the professional one out of the two of us. I tend to be a little bit looser and a little bit more, jokey. I'm a bit of a joker. I can't help it though. I like to have fun. I like to have fun. And people, if I kind of tell that they're not that way, I kind of, keep it away from them a little, but I just it comes out. I can't help it.
No, I think that's a great. I think that's a great suggestion. Is always kind of gauge the people you're working with before you start. Telling jokes,
calling them names and stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Roland. I didn't even know him a full afternoon before I got started getting called Prince Voltaire.
No, okay, so but in my defense,
I
Dean
know
Zachary.
Dean co-signed. That's the reason. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just giving you grief.
Yeah. Okay. I just want everybody to know that's listening here. I didn't just come out and say, "Hey, you look like Prince Voltan," right?
I'm just giving them grief, guys.
Well, I'm that way too, though. I'm a little bit quick, sometimes to go ahead. I kind of gauge people pretty quickly, whether they're cool or not. With laughing.
What about Curtis? Is Curtis cool?
I'm not cool about that stuff at all, man. I'm serious. So. Look at that face.
Curtis did change his camera, and I'm missing the coins binding.
I might bring it back. I figured
oh, there you go, John.
He did a Voltan. Nice.
Gordon's alive.
No, I drew this like that afternoon.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Because we were at a Memphis Comic Con when I met John. So. Yeah, and it was always Zachary's alive.
Well, in a situation like that, though, when you're at a table, I can imagine, you're talking to people and you kind of get in like a frenzy. You get kind of loose with folks, because you've been kind of talking to people quite a bit, and then it's kind of different, especially when you're not really working with them at the time. So
yeah,
I'm very thankful that the job that I work at, people are very understanding, and
yeah.
So
yeah,
and sometimes I make mistakes and I say things I shouldn't, but that's just me getting older.
My day job is I work with a bunch of really uptight people, so
there's always those.
So
there's always those.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with that. Everybody.
Whatever.
You do what you do. But I'm going to do what I do.
That's right. I let them be uptight when they're going to be uptight, and then I come to Silverline and have the fun, right?
Well, you're talking about kind of filling out the situation. It's like if you're familiar with that book, the Book of Five Rings, is that famous text by the swordsman Miyamoto Musashi about his his success as a, swordsman and, never losing a match. And it became this thing in the 80s for American businessmen to use as strategy against Japanese businessmen in their negotiations to get into the Japanese mindset. And one of the very first things they say in the book is like, you never make the first move, right? You let the other guy get the position and then reveal himself, and then you execute the technique. And so I went to Japan to work on a video game, and I was in a meeting room with the president of the company. And it totally was like that. They had me sit down, and in an American meeting, you already start talking. We just sat there and stared at each other for like a minute or two, waiting for somebody to say anything, because everybody's like trying to fill each other out, like who's gonna lose their cool and kind of reveal their hand about what they're thinking or what they're doing, right? So it's
That's funny.
Funny strategy,
I can just hear the good, bad, and the
Yeah.
ugly music going off during the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah, close up on the eyes.
I would so fail at that. I would, because I would be like, okay, let's talk.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, silence, it really gets awkward, doesn't it? I mean, when you get into a situation like that, it's very awkward.
Oh yeah.
So this is kind of interesting. Benny sent me a few pages of the script, and it's really just a film script is all it is. And it's just it's just a film script that's divided into pages. Be curious to figure out how you determine what goes on, how much content you can get on a single page. It's just a film script. I worked with a guy, he's not there anymore. He at Full Sail, he took his film script, and Hollywood had told him that they liked it, but and when I say Hollywood, that's just I don't know who he talked to, had told him that they liked it, but they couldn't visualize it, and they recommended that he do it as a comic book first. So he found an artist and said, okay, I want to turn this into a 120-page graphic novel. Here it is. And just handed them the film script, and then let them do all the work and turn it again into an adaptation. But Benny says here, ultimately a script is a dialogue between you and the artist, which is, this goes back to what I was, what Michelle quoted me from my class, is write a love letter to your illustrator. So whatever works, but because I try not to step on the toes creatively of artists. And I have usually been more pleasantly surprised by what I get than not. So, and really, that's the bottom line is that, I think I said it earlier, is that whatever works for you and your artist is what works. Again, if you're working for a company, the company may require you to do scripts in a certain fashion. But if you're just working with an artist on your own, whatever you and the artist are good with is it's fine. There's no that's the thing. There's no rules. There's no you don't have to answer to the academy or the film script people, TV, whatever, to, oh no, you don't have this in the right format, right?
I'm personally, I like either way, the Marvel style or the full script. I don't, because really for me, it's there's kind of goods and bads with both. So I mean, you just kind of trade one problem or positive for the other. So,
right. Yeah.
I think probably the major thing is, talking to somebody and knowing them. Like if you were a writer, you talk to your artist, and if you're an artist, you talk to your writer, kind of get the feel of who they are and what, kind of get the spirit of the story and stuff. And
right.
That's real important too, is for that kind of, syncing up. That helps a lot.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually something I tell my students a lot of time is that, when they leave stuff out of their script, and I'm like, well, here's the problem is that, what you're trying to do as the writer is you're trying to get the artist, particularly, if you write your script before you know who's going to draw it. Part of the challenge of doing that is getting all the information down on the page, because you want, and this is what I tell them, I say, you want your artist to be on the same page as you. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Sure,
That makes
thanks,
perfect
Curtis. I
sense.
appreciate that.
No, I totally got it.
You know,
Yeah.
but you want them to you want to be able to share your vision without dictating to them. You know, you want to be able to say, here's what I want, here's what I envision, here's what I imagine, and you want to be able to give all that to the artist without, you know, dictating to them exactly how to draw it all, so that they have the freedom to have the fun as well. And you know, that's not always easy, you know.
So I wanted
Yeah.
to say, when you were discussing, you know, about getting a job with a place that does have, at least that you've researched their style,
Yes.
or, you know, what sort of work that you do and how it actually compares to that, not only would you not really do as good a job, you know, if you don't like the style, but that mismatch would happen
Yeah.
with the art, because they have this inherent understanding that you would approach it the way that they're thinking.
Right. Yeah.
I think one thing, you know, kind of dovetail off of that, you know, about the job, and we're talking about accepting criticism or going over things, like, especially in stuff like comic books, there's not necessarily an interview like a corporate job where you would go in and have your resume and then you show it and all that stuff. It's the portfolio, the work, and then it's a sit down talk. And whether you know it or not, how you react, that is the interview. So
Yeah.
if let's say you're an aspiring penciler and you go to a company and the person reviewing your portfolio says, you know, I don't like how you're doing this, you should be doing that, and you start to disagree and go, you know, I don't disagree, this is my style and this is this. How are they going to see you as somebody that can work on a script with them
Right.
and can follow instructions and can work with them? I mean, that's the interview right there, whether you
Yeah.
know it or not.
Yeah.
I always heard it's like, they say for guys, you know, when you're dating a girl, they said, you know, treat her pet well, because whether you realize or not, that pet symbolizes the child that she might have with you at
Yeah.
some point. You know, and case in point, when I married, you know, my wife, she told me, you know, she took me over a friend's house where they had this dog that everybody loved. And she said, I watched how that dog reacted to you, and that dog went right over to you and was cool with you. She goes, my
Oh
ex-boyfriend,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
ex-boyfriend, the dog didn't like him right from the get-go. So, you know,
Yep.
you're always interviewing,
That's
whether
funny.
you realize it, you know.
That's good stuff. And
Yeah.
you can really tell a lot about people just by tiny things, you know. I mean, even mowing, you know, mowing the yard, even, I mean, do they cut corners? Do they, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, how detailed were they about it? You know, you can tell a lot about people's personality just by very innocuous things. And I was told, you know, however they treat drive-through people, you know, like that was some of the advice that I got
Yeah.
growing up. How do they treat drive-through people? And
Or the waiter.
yeah, or
Yeah.
the waiter.
Yeah.
Yep. How do they treat their parents?
Uh-huh.
People they
Yeah.
live with, you know? But of course, you know, in that, you know, when you fall in love, love covers a multitude of sins. So you don't see all, you put those glasses on, that's it. You know, you don't see all that stuff.
But there's always that thing where they go, I see them treat everybody else that way, but they never treat me that way. And then, you know, a year or two
Right
later,
now.
why are you
Right.
treating me this way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I broke up with my girlfriend. Why? Because her dog didn't like me.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I have the dog.
Yeah.
I have the dog. Yeah.
There you
I
go.
took her dog instead, right?
I have
Um,
actually, I will admit that I've actually, you know, even on dating profiles, even if the girl's like, yeah, she's okay, but that dog's really cute, I've actually clicked like hoping to meet the dog.
Oh,
Like, I really want to
no.
meet the dog, but I'm not really interested. Yeah.
That's funny.
I want to pet the dogs.
You know, Chris, you know, our time is getting short here, but talking about professionalism. So how do you handle professionally? How do you handle a situation where you do have, you know, some kind of creative differences where you're like, you know, they say, I want you to draw this way. And you're like, well, that's not really my style. What, you know, what do you do? You know?
Just politely ask them why they suck. But I do it in a very polite manner. I mean, I want them to be like, just detail why you suck so bad and make bullet points. And all. I mean, this is just, That's professional.
You want
But-
John Medic to make a PowerPoint, right?
I think the biggest thing is it's one, it's always keep what the end goal is in mind. Like, is it to serve your ego, or is it to serve the project? You know.
Exactly.
But-
Yeah,
but-
I agree.
Yeah, and even bigger than that, you know. I mean, like, one of my favorite fighters was this guy named Kong Lei, and he said something so deep in this documentary where they're talking about, because he won a whole bunch of his fights, but not all of them, and sometimes he got beat up pretty bad. And they said, "What's your outlook?" And he goes, "I train like a champion, I fight like a champion, I win like a champion, and if I lose like a champion." Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got laid off from one of my jobs in video games. You know, it was like one of those deals where it was like, what, Friday, 5 o'clock, all of a
Oh
sudden
boy.
they wouldn't have the meeting, right?
Wow.
And
Ugh.
and not to go too far into details, it really was more based on personalities. You know, it was more based on personalities. The boss, to the point where the boss, I think, was afraid to fire me himself, so he didn't even come to work that day.
No way.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, man.
He kind of hid at home, and then had everybody else do the laying off. You know, and so, you know, we're talking about stuff, you know, as they're laying me off. and-
Curtis, with your martial arts background, I probably wouldn't want to fire you either. I would probably call in sick.
Well, I don't know. It's a thing I do, right? But it's, you know, like, you know, I don't want to get arrested either, you know. And
Yeah,
but,
right.
but I mean, you know, it was one of those kind of things. And even though they laid me off, and I didn't agree with them, they came to a point where we were talking, and I didn't believe it was a fair layoff. But I just said, hey, if it's not up for discussion, it's not up for discussion. And I
Yeah,
made
you-
sure when I left to walk across the hallway to the other partner who was at the company, who knew I was getting laid off, and shake his hand and said, thank you for the opportunity to work here,
Yeah.
and leave like that, because at least I can leave with my hell high. So it's like anything, right? You can't control necessarily the result, but you can control how you handle it. And
Right.
and if you
That's
can leave with your
exactly
hell
right.
high, I mean, that's everything, right? So
Yeah.
And you never know where these people will be and where you will be in the future. You know,
Yeah.
you don't want to burn any bridges or, you know, say things that you can't really take back. I've never understood that. I have left places before where they would have done exactly as I did, given my situation, yet they took it upon themselves to be terrible, you know, just really. And it's like, and I knew that it was going to happen at, you know, the particular place I'm thinking of, because nobody that ever left that place was able to leave on good terms, because they made such a,
Oh yeah.
you know, a huge problem with the whole thing. And you know, you do the best you can, but as far as you know, leaving, I am the exact same way. You know, you just have to hold your head up high, and you never know where people are going to be, you know, in the future. You never don't know, you know, they may even call you back. You may not want to
Well,
go back after
yeah.
something.
I think you always have to
You
be
know.
true to yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, what does they say about character? You know, character is what you do when no one's looking.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that you know, that same kind of thing, you know, being professional in a terrible situation is not easy to do, but
Yeah.
that can also follow you. And I think that, you know, because, you know, we're comics, so that's what we're talking about. I know Curtis has you know, animation experience, but the thing that I think the thing that's hard sometimes for folks to realize is the comic book industry is a small industry. It's not big, right? You know, and I'm not going to say everybody knows everybody, but almost. You know, so many people know so many people. Just, you know, with the
Oh, yeah.
six of us here tonight, we could probably, you know, run through a list of creators, and there's probably not too many of them that we could name that we don't collectively know in some form or fashion. And certainly if Barb were here, you know, that list would be even harder to do, you know. So, but you know, it's such a small industry, and you know, people talk. I know somebody said something to me about a certain creator recently, And I said, we'll have lunch. It's like, I'm not going to write this to you. I'm not going to type this to you. Right. I'm not going to mention names in it, but I'll talk, and that's the way you'll find, I think, people in the industry is that, when you have I don't mind mentioning Andrew Rev's name, but because he still owes a lot of people that I know money. He's the guy who owns the Elementals now, Bill Willingham's Elementals. And he's also the guy who owns a piece of Rob Liefeld's properties. I don't know which ones now, but
Young blood.
He is. Okay.
yeah, and he would be a guy I would quickly tell you avoid him. Just avoid doing work with him. If you decide to do work with Andrew Rev, just know that you're taking your own chance. That you might not be paid. But that's the thing, is that creators have a tendency to be that way. I think comic creators have a tendency to be that way. And in our conversations, we're like, hey, you probably want to avoid this person.
Yeah. And I think it's also, there's the pragmatic side that you don't want to burn bridges, but it's also,
right.
You don't want to demean yourself for yourself.
Right.
In a situation that you don't need to. Like if I, in that situation, had I blown up and all that, anybody that was on the fence that was like, I wonder if he shouldn't or should have been fired or, whatever,
Oh yeah.
it would all sway to one side.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but also for myself, I always say, and I try, it's not easy, but it's like when you're trying to make a life decision, it's like, okay, if you were writing a book, which is your life, right, is right or wrong, what's going to happen next? What would you want to have happen in the story? How do you want the character to act? And you get to write that yourself. So do I want the character to lose their temper and be classless and angry and, vindictive? That's not the story that I want to write.
Right.
So I don't know what's going to happen to the character after that, but I make sure the character stays on that path. And I can walk away with my adult eye that way, most of the time.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think it's a lot about maturity.
yeah.
Right? That's what we're really talking about. Professionalism and maturity is being.
I have none of that.
I don't have it in a lot of ways. I don't.
Ask Roland every time I get on the air. It's like, now, Aaron, behave yourself.
Maturity.
Final comments here. Benny says scripts. I have just paragraphs. So often in scripts, I have just paragraphs of here's what happens on these pages without the dialogue. The dialogue is just rough dialogue as well, very much Marvel style. And then he said final dialogue never matches the preliminary ones that I write. Yeah, which is very, very Marvel style, which of course I'm a big fan of. But
something that we had talked about earlier, though, talking about changing the style and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I know just me personally, and you really need to be malleable.
Yeah.
To some extent, you have to be flexible to some extent. There's no, the job that I work at, I have to go. I have a description that the customer gives, or the rep gives me, that the customer gave them, and sometimes they want a Warner Brothers, style.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they want a Saturday morning cartoon style. Sometimes and you really need to be malleable. You need to be flexible to be able to do to whatever extent you can. And really it makes you better.
Yeah.
It makes you better if you because there's stuff that I've had to draw because I do this job that I would never have drawn, and styles that I've drawn in. And we also do mascot lines. So they can't all look the same. They have to, I've done so many different kinds of tiger mascots for schools that it's crazy. There's so many different styles. And I've had to look to different artists in comics. I've had to look, styles in other areas to try to do that. You have to be malleable. You have to be available and willing, flexible to change, So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
Any other final words of on Professionalism Take 2?
I got one thought.
Okay.
That when when you get stumped, and don't be afraid to ask your the people that you work with. Their perspective can
Oh, that's so
be
good,
so
yeah.
invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I'll tell you guys, this is one of the things that that I have really enjoyed about what Silverline has kind of become. If you had said this to me, 2 years ago when all the stuff started happening, I don't know that I would have exactly seen it the way it is. But I really do like what the atmosphere that has kind of grown out of it. And for those of you who may have heard us talking about, we've got an in-house chat on Facebook that it gets wild and crazy sometimes, but it's such a positive, uplifting, encouraging. I enjoy the heck out of it. I told BJ, I said, it's not really what I envisioned when I started the group. It's more of an informational thing, but I like what it's become, and it's I do love the very much the team encouragement idea behind it all. I just I sometimes I just love to sit back and watch it.
Oh, so that's what you've been doing the last few days.
No, the last week, I have been
It's so
out of
funny,
pocket.
He's been laughing
Yeah,
at
it's so
us.
funny in chat. People are like, "Has anybody seen Rowan?" No, not in a couple days. I don't know where he's at. It's like, oh no, are we
So
going to see this on a crime show?
You
or
guys
something
didn't see
here?
the ransom money I posted after that?
So I can say this because I'm pretty sure no one I work with will listen to this, but I went to Arkansas and Tennessee this past week. My parents both turned 80, and so we went to celebrate their 80th birthday. But as a happy coincidence, my daughter, who had just moved from California, had all of her stuff in my dad's shed. And so while we were there, my daughter has a new job that she starts tomorrow in Nashville. So while we were in Arkansas, we loaded up a U-Haul and moved her to Nashville. Needless to say, I didn't have internet. My parents live, for Jeff Whiting, I think is the only, I think Dean might have seen, but Jeff Whiting has been to my parents' house, so he can attest that they live. I tell people all the time, I come from a long line of farmers. They live in the middle of nowhere. This just farming community, right? And their internet is just not good at all. And so yeah, I was just out of pocket for the last week, and
That has to be the longest excuse I've ever heard. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So anyway, we got back last night. And I'm excited for my daughter starting a new job in Nashville. She got a new job, a new car, a new boyfriend, a new apartment. So yeah.
What the
So
heck did she do?
yeah.
A lot of news.
A lot of news, yeah.
Good gosh.
The reason Roland told us that story in such detail is that we remember in detail when we tell the police. So
Yeah.
we all do the alibi. It's like,
Yeah.
remember what you've all heard. This is
Now it's recorded, so his alibi is
That's
firm.
right.
It's
If it's
yeah.
recorded, it's true.
Yeah, there you go.
Dante, what's up? Dante pokes his head up and says, "Hello, everyone." What's up,
Hello,
Dante?
hello. What's
Just
up?
in time for us to sign off and say goodbye. So as we sign off here, shout out to Daytona Beach Comic Con. Remember that this is coming up this September. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. This has been Silver Sunday for April 11. Don't forget, John will be streaming tomorrow night, and Wednesday night, the Whammers will be back. I'm not sure what the topic is yet. I'll probably figure that out tomorrow sometime. And then we'll talk whatever they talk about Wednesday. We'll talk about it as well. But until then, remember to
Make
make
mine
mine
Silverline.
Silverline. All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.